there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are in, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and that's Donald Trump coming back from his visit to the UK. Kind of on the heels of that, just before that trip started, President Macron of France said they were going to recognize Palestine in the General Assembly that's in September. So I think what's happening here is these leaders are getting a lot of pressure from factions of their parties that are anti-Israel. And they're trying to give some time frame here that we're going to do this by the General Assembly in September. But here are the questions, and I'll start with France, then go to England, then go to the United States. France says they're going to do it. What are they recognizing? Who are they recognizing? And what's the location of where they're recognizing it? I looked into the thing that Ed said about the West Bank and things that were happening a couple days ago, and that is right. And the people that attacked the Palestinians, the Israelis, the attacked the Palestinians have been arrested and are going to go through the judicial system because what they did was wrong. So my support of Israel does not mean that the people of Israel, or every single person of Israel, does not do something wrong sometimes. If they do, they're going to have the letter of the law used against them just like anybody else, because they are an elected country with a formal government that has the rule of law that they follow. Okay? So you can point to, it's apples and oranges, things that are happening under a government and things that are happening in a war and against a terrorist organization. This is not a war against Gaza. This is a war against a terrorist organization that took hostages on October 7th. And if they would release the hostages, this would be over. So Macron has said by September he's going to do this. Keir Starmer, which we're going to play next, or we're going to play some comments about this. Keir Starmer made this kind of weird comment, and we're going to have Roger Gewalb on tomorrow from the UK to kind of explain this. But either you release the hostages or we're going to recognize you in September. It doesn't make any sense, because what has got to happen is that the hostages have to be released. And this is this weird setup. So here's this piece of audio that kind of takes the next step and looks at what's happening related to this discussion. Here it is.
So we as a country will recognise the state of Palestine, provided Israel, or we won't do it if Israel agrees to a ceasefire, ends the appalling situation in Gaza, which is pretty subjective. And as long as Israel commits to a long-term sustainable peace, but there's no demand on the Palestinians at all. Absolutely zero. Do the Palestinians have to recognise the legitimacy of the state of Israel and promise to exist peacefully in coexistence? No.
So that was actually Nigel Farage, who is looking to be the next prime minister, basically saying what I've been saying is that what are you recognizing? How are you recognizing? What is the state of, quote, Palestine? There is no state of Palestine, okay? And there is no government right now because they suspended it back in around 2007. They took over, Israel pulled out. They left greenhouses and water stations and all kinds of infrastructure that they had built in Gaza. Hamas immediately burns it all down, starts killing their enemies, and then suspends the government. Okay? So, yes, I agree 100% that the Palestinian people are victims in this situation. But they have also cheered on and helped, that we have learned from the hostages that have been released, that they cheered on and helped keep these hostages. And so their hands are not clean either. What it looks like, and I also double-checked about the food situation. First of all, now the New York Times and the BBC have had to come forward and say that they used pictures. Because everybody asked the question of that you have these two pictures of two different children that were being used in both the BBC and the New York Times articles. But the people that were around them, these two children, were all well fed and looked like they had plenty of food. They were dressed well. They looked good. Everything was fine. And people started to say, wait a minute. If everybody's starving in Gaza, how are these two children looking like they're starving, but their families look like they're fine? How does that happen? So both New York Times and the BBC have had to put out statements saying that it turned out that these children had other physical problems that were causing this problem that they had and the look that they had. And in at least one of the cases, and I think in both of the cases, the Israeli government has flown these children to other places to get the kind of medical care that they need. And in fact, in the one that was used in the BBC, there is a current picture of that child that they've used side by side in the picture that they originally used, and the child looks great. I mean, the child's in a hospital gown, but the child is filled out, his face is filled out, he looks better, he's getting nutrition, all of that kind of stuff. So that makes it hard to believe anything coming out of Hamas. But what I've found is in the southern area of Gaza, where they're allowing the IDF and the United States in to distribute this food, they're doing really well. They've distributed something like 100 million meals in the last 3 months. And people are doing well. And they're trying to get up into the more war-torn areas of Gaza to fix that problem. So there is a bigger problem in the northern part of Gaza than there is in the southern part of Gaza. But it is a problem of Hamas's making. It is not a problem of the IDF's making. And how you know that, as I pointed out yesterday, was that Hamas continually says everything is the IDF's fault. They do nothing wrong. They're just sitting there on a street corner and a Mack truck hit them and they don't know what's going on. And the IDF, if you look at their press releases, they have press releases about successes in Gaza. They have press releases about mistakes they made in the investigations that went along with that. That is the difference between a real government and a terrorist organization. Now, here's the audio that Keir Starmer put out, and it really doesn't make any sense. I wanted you to hear this.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
So, all the requests are on IDF's side. Israel has agreed to ceasefires before. They've left the table right now because Hamas has hardened their position. And because France and England came out with these statements, Hamas has said, well, I'll just wait it out until September. I don't care how many people die. And I'll wait it out till September and then we'll get what we want. But what is the state of Palestine? Now, I know some of you will say, well, the UN drew the lines for Israel originally, so they can just draw the lines for what Palestine is. Israel in its current form is much smaller than what traditional Israel has been. I just think that if you've got to take away your little mask that you wear where you want to be anti-Israel, and you have to really look at the data. Who has cooperated? Who has tried to have ceasefires? Who has held up their end of the bargain when bargains have been made, and who hasn't? Now, I agree that the Palestinian people, the few that are blameless in this, are the pawns here. But who is making them a pawn? Israel didn't want to have a war. They were attacked on October 7th. Now, I understand. I mean, Hamas has won the PR war. I'll give them that. We have allowed terrorists to win a PR war because the world is now putting a lot of pressure on Israel and not asking anything of Hamas. And you know what? We're going to live to regret it. We'll be back.